welcome to Cover Story. Well, today we are joined by someone, I would say, a very special friend of mine, someone who whose books I read a lot, someone who I enjoy reading to an extent. I do admire your skill in writing also. Ashwin Sanghi, I think a name that we're all familiar with. He's a writer of fiction thrillers, which have deeply rooted in some mythological background, but he's also written a whole lot of self-help books. And recently, the reason why we are meeting today is that he recently wrote a blog on 10 basic points that the new government should do. And what I liked about it, it's clear from the rhetoric of, the politics or even the secular versus communal debate. He went back to the basics, which is why he called it the 10 basic points, really. But before we go into that, Ashwin, a bit about yourself, because I know a lot of people, most people have read the book, but since we are getting to talk to you in person.
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, Priya. Much as you follow me, I also follow you.
That's good.
And I love the fact that you have this very relaxed style of being able to ask questions, and the toughest ones, but you still manage to elicit responses in a very calm and relaxed manner. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Let's see how I fare with you now. But, your books, for instance, I was reading a bit about you also. The fact is that you went back to, how your grandfather used to send you some books, and your mom sent you some books, and one sent you racy books, one sent you more serious academics, which is why we see a mix of both in your writing.
With me, I took to writing very late in life. It's the entire story of my book writing career is about 12 years old. I was in my 30s.
You're an MBA graduate.
And I'm an MBA graduate in finance. So in the sense that, and I come from a typical Banya background, so it was taken for granted that I'm going to be
business.
What is a Banya son? A Banya. So, I mean, it was pretty much decided that I was going to be in business. But I think what was happening in my life during the time that I was growing up was my Nanaji, who lived in Kanpur. And he used to always tell me, he would say that, beta, tumhare life mein Lakshmi ki to puja tum karoge hi. Because after all, that's your background. But he said, remember one thing, Lakshmi goes where Saraswati is. So he said, Saraswati ki puja karo, Lakshmi automatically khud ba khud aa jayegi. And in that sense, towards that endeavor, he would send me a book every week to read. And of course, in the initial days, I was not interested in actually reading the books. I was more interested in adding one more to my bookshelf. So the old man, of course, wisened up and he realized I wasn't reading. So then he said, okay, I'm going to send you a book every week, but you will send me a letter telling me what you read, what you liked, what you didn't like. And once I receive that letter, then I'll send you the next one. So it became the primitive form of a book review. And it was a tradition which we followed for several years till the time that he died. And during his lifetime, he sent me a little over 400 books. In that sense, I would say that my real education came from him. And maybe somewhere there was that जिसे कहते हैं almost a spark that he had lit. And that spark was somewhere there, but it was latent. And it only emerged much later in the form of a writer.
But also your books, you've been called India's answer to Dan Brown. And, I would tend to agree with that because there's a whole lot of, we don't just get the fast-paced narrative, but we also get the whole ambience. And I learn a lot about our own culture, a little bit about the mythologies that, so there's a lot of research. And I'm very interested in one of your, because we've all watched the Mahabharata, if not read it. So the Krishna Key, you said that I like Krishna because he is a grey character.
Absolutely.
That can you...
well, I mean, if you look at all of my books, frankly, Priya, the central characters tend to be grey. I mean, Chanakya's chant was a prime example where the character of Gangasagar Mishra as well as the character of Kautilya both are extremely grey because it's very difficult to peg them down as white or black or good or bad.
As is what happens in real life.
Absolutely. And similarly, for example, if you take, let's say, my first book, The Rosabal Line, which was about Jesus Christ and his purported burial in Srinagar. Again, I find that character extremely fascinating because, on the one hand, you call him the son of God, but on the other hand, in his times, he was probably a political activist of sorts. He could have been that time's Kanhaiya Kumar, for example. And then, of course, you come to, let's say, a book like the Krishna Key, And, you have on one hand Krishna, who we revere and we worship, and there is that beautiful, lovable cowherd from Mathura that steals butter. But on the other hand, on the battlefield, he is not above and beyond using every trick in the book because supposedly he's on the side of dharma. But I find that dichotomy very, very stark. And that's the reason why I find this character so interesting, so intriguing. And to that extent, I find the entire events around the Mahabharata war themselves, because there's so much that we can pick up from those incidents. We see the Mahabharata playing out every day. We've just got over one.
Literally.
We see it playing out all the time. And I feel that there is still a lot that we can take away as learnings from those events.
You spoke about Kanhaiya Kumar, I'm asking you, any of the current day politicians that you would find fascinating to draw upon for character traits, if not,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Narendra Modi ji, of course.
Yes,
himself.
Why not?
Amit Shah, 110%. In fact, I mean, when people read Chanakya's chant, which was written well before Amit Shah came on the scene, it was, people now read that book and say, were you writing this about Amit Shah? But the truth is that there were combinations of characters. I still believe that if you really think in terms of the Chanakyas of our life, people like Narasimha Rao were terrific Chanakyas. To carry a minority government for so many years.
When you didn't even have the party support.
Where you didn't even have the party support.
Yes.
I would say that is truly Kautilyan. Or, for example, Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Yes.
Where he could get away with saying almost everything. But because he sort of layered it with his poetry and sugar, it just got absorbed so beautifully into the system. So I think there have been many characters like that. Mayawati is an example. Most of my books, I tend to pick up not characters from real life, but I pick up character traits from real life. And then I sort of make an amalgam of them.
That's interesting. What is your take on Rahul Gandhi? I notice you haven't...
I feel sorry for Rahul Gandhi.
Really?
I really do. Because I really wish that this would have been his coming of age moment.
Yes, it was supposed to.
Where we could have had a very reasonable opposition. I think anyone, including people who may be pro-BJP, I think they would agree on the fact that you do need to have a sensible and a real opposition sitting in parliament, so that it's capable of keeping the government of the day on its toes. I mean, for example, not that nowadays one should look to the UK as an example, but the idea of having a shadow minister is something so important, because at least that one person is tracking every move of the real minister and is probably keeping themselves abreast with what is happening and the data that is there. I think what we are really missing is a effective opposition. And I really wish that Rahul Gandhi had been that person to provide it.
So now, supposing you're writing a book and your book is poised halfway, and Rahul is your lead character, what would you have him do? Well,
unfortunately, that would be unfortunately a comedy or tragedy of sorts, because
I know you want Modi as your lead character, but you have Rahul.
Because somehow or the other, this is a character that evokes sympathy in some ways, because he is.
None of your lead characters evoke sympathy.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say that where is he coming from? Is his heart really in the job? Or is this something that he has just been sort of pushed into and is having to almost live up to a set of expectations? I know, and the reason I can empathize and sympathize with him is because I went through 35 years of my life being in a business family which was not only came with its own set of privileges, but it also came as a golden handcuff in the sense that this is what you were expected to do. And breaking away from that and saying, no, my life is about the written word was a very, very difficult decision to make. I sometimes really wonder as to whether that decision needs to happen as far as Rahul goes.
I don't know, see, but you found a way out. Now, I've heard you talk about the fact that you don't have a 9 to 5 job, but you have 5 to 9. You get up at 5 a.m. and you write till 9 a.m.
That's right.
And then get on to do whatever else.
Yes.
So there is that balance that you've done. My reading of Rahul is that I agree with you that I don't think his heart was in the job, but no, seeing the way he's been and little interaction I've had, he always says, I work to no one's deadlines but my own. So he didn't take over as party chief until he said, I'm ready. His mother wanted him much earlier.
That's right.
So now that he's ready in the last 2 years,
yes.
do you not feel that he gave it his all? What the result is different, but from his point.
He did give it his all. And I think the biggest unfortunate glaring error that I see now from UPA 1 and UPA 2 was the fact that he never took on any responsibility in governance, or, he should have been given a couple of portfolios during those 10 years so that he could have sunk his teeth into them and really proved his mettle. Much like what we are seeing Amit Shah going into the Home Ministry right now. I mean, there is a grooming of sorts happening in that sense.
That's a very interesting point to make, which is where Amit Shah is heading. Which is true, we always say there's a Gujarat model, but there is no Rahul model. What does he?
Precisely.
What do we judge him by?
Exactly. Where is the yardstick really? So I don't really know as to whether that would be a choice of character as a lead character for one of my books. Seems unlikely.
Okay, but I can see you're veering towards Modi, which is Modi's character. How do you see that he's, transformed himself over the years? How do you see a changeover? Do you think that he's holding to what he was? He hasn't really changed. It's we who are seeing him differently.
No, I think the yardstick by which we have judged him has been exceptionally harsh. I genuinely believe that, I think, Priya, that we need to distinguish between intentions and execution. Modi ji has always come across, as far as I am concerned, as a person with noble intentions. So I have not seen him in that sense in a negative light. I've always seen that, well, this man's heart is in the right place. ये कुछ करना चाहता है.
नियत ठीक है.
नियत ठीक है. हाँ. But what I found lacking is on the execution front.
Right.
And to a certain extent, I've also felt it in terms of the sort of team that he created around him. With the last government that went by, there was so much of talent available. And to a certain extent, I find that this is one of the limitations that we have of the parliamentary system, where necessarily grassroots politicians have to be the ones who are rewarded with portfolios, and you have to maintain regional balance and caste balance and 100 other factors, gender balance before you can actually come up with a cabinet. Sometimes again, please excuse my saying this because I am a fiction writer living in my fantasy world. So maybe it has no bearing in terms of the way government is run. But sometimes I think to myself, what are we talking about? 543 members of the Lok Sabha? Or 545, I can't remember.
543, well, 545, but 2 on.
Yeah, so 545. And if I'm not mistaken, the maximum size of the Union Council of Ministers could be 15% of that.
Yes.
So in other words, you have about 70 or 75 as the maximum size. Imagine if you had one minister responsible for achieving and delivering on one key deliverable during the term of the government. I mean, this entire system where we simply allocate portfolios and we say, ab tum chalao. Couldn't we say, there are enough secretaries to run the departments, but couldn't we say, hey, listen, this is your key deliverable during the term of this government, because we would see so much progress happening on those 60 or 70 key deliverable areas.
So you're saying don't make them file pushers, and secondly, give each one project rather than a ministry.
Absolutely. Because you're there only for a limited period of time. So how much transformation can you actually make? I don't know. Sometimes I wish that we could have a little more lateral thinking, a little more out of the box thinking in terms of the way we govern.
Well, I don't know whether Prime Minister Modi will agree he's here for a limited period of time because he's seeing a mandate much larger and more than you and I are.
Absolutely.
But we're going to take a break. But after a break, I'm going to come back and ask Ashwin about something that he wrote something very interesting about 10 basic points that a new government should actually look into. And he steers away from the rhetoric of, as I said, whether it's the national caste, secularism, blah, blah, blah. But he actually gets down to what he's now calling deliverables. So let's try and figure out what the key focus areas of that are going to be. But after a break. Hello and welcome back to Cover Story. We are in conversation with the novelist, author Ashwin Sanghi. You also written a lot of self-help books before I call you a novelist.
Sure.
This thing.
You know what happened actually, Priya, was very strange. I had written about 3 or 4 novels, all in that historical, mythological, theological thriller space. And I was at a literary event somewhere in Chennai, and someone asked me. They said a young lady asked me. She said, "What do you attribute your success to?" And I answered very honestly, luck. Now, apparently, she wasn't really satisfied with the answer.
Okay.
So I gave her a little bit of a story. I said, see, when I had just started out, I had been rejected by 47 literary agents and publishers.
Really? No less?
No less, 47. And I used to keep a scorecard in front of my desk that how many down. And I said, after all of this rejection happening, I eventually had to self-publish. But that decision to self-publish had happened as a result of a family friend who used to come and have his evening drink on the weekends with my father. And he asked me one day, he said, Beta, you're looking very depressed. What's the matter? And I said, Uncle, 47 rejections. So, I don't know where I'm going with this. He said, remember one thing in life, 99% is about good luck. I was in a bit of an argumentative mood. So I said, but what about the 1%?
Yeah.
The 1% must be hard work. It must be talent, efficiency, management, networking, so many things. So he drained his glass very, very quickly. And he put it down on the table like this. And he said, that 1% is known as bloody good luck.
Yeah.
So 99% is good luck and 1% is bloody good luck. So I started thinking about it, and this is what I narrated to the young lady. When we went out of the auditorium, the young lady followed me and she said that, sir, in case everything is luck, then I may as well sit at home and watch television. Because everything is predetermined, destined. So my publisher was standing next to me and he started laughing, and he said that, Ashwin, I think this demands a book to demystify luck. And so I ended up writing this book called 13 Steps to Bloody Good Luck.
Okay.
And we did not expect to sell too many because, at the end of the day, I'm known for my fiction writing. So, a self-help, motivational type book, we really didn't know whether it would sell or not, but it sold really well. And a lot of people came back and said, if you can demystify a topic like luck, then why can't you demystify other topics? And so we ended up doing a book on wealth, 13 Steps to Bloody Good Wealth. And, a lot of people who had a vertical domain expertise and knowledge came back and said, we can actually do the research and the writing, and you can just do the storytelling, which is what you're good at. So all the other books were all co-authored books. We've done a book on wealth, we've done a book on health, we've done a book on parenting, a book on Marx.
Money, asset management.
So it's just taken on a life of its own. And that's really, obviously I cannot hold up myself as an example of a person who has domain vertical expertise in each of those subjects. So what I bring to the table is simply my ability to tell a good story.
I think which is half the battle. Look at our Prime Minister.
Absolutely. Ultimately, it's all about narratives, right?
Yes.
So, and I think this has come across very, very clearly that in this time's election, there was one very clear narrative and there was one very, very fuzzy narrative.
Yeah, they lacked a narrative, they lacked a hero. So
absolutely.
There was
no story.
No story there. Well said. Which brings me to, I'm poised at a point where I can take the conversation this way or that way. So it's because I want to know how it is like to be co-authoring a book with James Patterson, which is also something you've done.
Sure.
So can you quickly talk about that, and then we talk about your...
Okay. Well, it's a lot of fun actually, because James is one of those people who really believes in sort of focusing on human attention spans. And one of the examples that comes across is that over the last 13 years, the human attention span went from about 12 seconds to 8 seconds.
Right.
And during the same time, when we were at 8 seconds, a goldfish had a 9-second attention span. So keep holding people's attention and getting them to turn the page is the trickiest job or challenge that faces us novelists. It was
I don't think you should have that problem.
yeah, but think about this, Priya. The director Alfred Hitchcock said that the ideal length of a movie is related to the endurance of the human bladder. So, in other words, you'll only sit for as long as your bladder can keep up. With a book, we don't have that challenge because you can always get up and take a break.
Correct.
But how do I ensure that at the end of every chapter, you're willing to switch and you're willing to move on? And how do I propel you into the next chapter? That is really where James comes into the picture. So what we did was we decided that, okay, one person will do a plot outline. Whoever does the plot outline will not be the one to do the first draft. And whoever does the first draft will not be the one to do the second draft.
Oh.
So we went back and forth. The only time that we really had a lot of debate and discussion was at the plotting stage. And I genuinely find that even with my books in the Bharat series, the maximum amount of time that goes in is at the time of research, which is typically anywhere between 9 months to a year, about 3 months on account of the plotting. And the actual writing is only about 6 months. So, so most of our discussion was centered around the plotting
of this thing. But that's pretty interesting because, when two people come together to actually literally be on the same page.
Oh, absolutely. And to a very great extent, I think, singing solo is far easier.
Yes, I agree with you.
To create a harmony out of 2 or more voices is far more difficult in that sense because you have to coordinate your steps.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, with him it was effortless because I think partly it was also because we are both thriller writers, so we understand the value of being able to keep the pace going.
Which is
larger than life characters, broad brush strokes, ensuring that the chapters, typically a Patterson book, chapters will never be more than about 1,000 words at most. Which means that, in other words, by the time that you're getting slightly weary of a scene, it's time to change the scene.
Okay, that's the trick. Now, the reason why I actually lured you for this conversation is, I liked what you wrote in one of your blogs or something. You focus on basic areas that any government should focus on. And a couple of things that I liked, for instance, you said India is the land of IIMs, IITs, but where we really lack is our primary education.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the very good points, plus a couple of others, if you can just tell us.
Sure. So, I don't know, I have read the manifestos of both sides of the political spectrum. But to a very great extent, it brings me back to that issue which I was talking about, that why can't one key deliverable be delivered by each minister? And somewhere I feel that because we are trying to target so many things, everything ends up getting diluted. That is not to say that in the last 5 years, there hasn't been a lot of progress. I personally feel that to a very great extent, this last election result indicates that people have felt that there has been some effort to deliver something to them. But I feel that a lot of the broader issues are dealt with in very, very broad brushstrokes in most of the manifestos. Like, for example, I genuinely believe that climate change and environment is such a huge issue that is going to be facing us as well as our children and grandchildren. But very few of the political parties seem to be talking about it. I live in a city like Mumbai, which could have rising sea levels within the next decade or so. But the municipal corporation can barely get its head out of the possibility of clearing out the drainage system.
Correct.
Where can they plan for what is likely to happen 10 or 20 years from now? So I think there are many other issues like water. We used to talk about the fact that water is something that could possibly inspire wars, and we used to laugh at that prospect. We said wars happen because of oil, not because of water.
Correct.
But this is now beginning to emerge like a stark reality, that today you have a country like India which has 18% of the world's population, but only 4% of the usable water resources. That's a scary thought. So how are we going to take care of that? Food. I mean, I was shocked to read that we are somewhere around 103 out of 118 in terms of the global rankings on the hunger index. I mean, I was under the impression that our white revolution and green revolution had produced more than enough food for us to feed everyone. But somewhere along the way, you still find all these stark discrepancies where, for example, you have areas which are short in water producing sugarcane. Or, you have export of certain items happening which should not be exported. You have a terrible public distribution system.
Yes.
Warehousing and cold chain needs to undergo tremendous transformation. But I do believe that today, if we are talking about a new India, then isn't the new India entitled to 2 square meals a day? So I think food is a huge issue. Law and order and justice, come on, for heaven's sake. Why should a person have the scant possibility of his case being heard for 10 or 20 years?
Yes.
I mean, justice delayed is justice denied. But we've not really looked into our justice delivery system at all. I mean, we still have an antiquated system where judges and lawyers take off for summer vacations and winter vacations. There are also some wonderful examples of judges sitting up till 1 o'clock in the morning and listening to cases because the pendency is high.
But that's only cases that have a political ramification.
Possibly. And no, there have been 1 or 2 examples that I read of recently in the Bombay High Court, where the judge in question, the lordship in question, sat till almost about 2 o'clock clearing his caseload. But that also caused a problem with the lawyers because they said we had to be up till 2 a.m.
Also.
So I think somewhere we need to sort of really look at that. Our police forces are so outdated. I mean, this came to light during the Mumbai attacks, and that how do you expect our police force to really be able to fight the sort of crime that we are now facing when it comes to things like cybercrime, when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to technologically savvy criminals?
How do you,
we are light years behind, and we have an opportunity in front of us, Priya, because for the first time we have a situation where the central government and the state governments are the same party, mostly. So there is a chance for center-state coordination to happen in terms of law and order issues.
On all the issues, in fact. So this is the time to act. We're totally out of time. I've been getting very secret signals from everybody to say wind up. But thank you so much for this conversation. We could have gone on and on.
Absolutely.
Because we haven't even addressed the elephant in the room which you brought about, which is population control, which I'm very glad that you raised that as one of the key issues that needs to be addressed.
We need to we need to stop shoving stuff under the carpet. And population control is one of them.
What we need to do is call you back for another discussion, and hopefully soon.
I look forward to that.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Priya.
As we really ran out of time too fast, too soon, but that's it for now. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again same time next week.